My boyfriend stole my identity to live my life. Then one post destroyed everything he'd built. Emily Carter, 32 years old. 6 months ago, if someone had asked what would eventually destroy my relationship, I would have blamed the endless hours at the law firm or the pressure of chasing a partnership. I never would have guessed it would come down to 3 words my boyfriend repeated so often they stopped sounding confident and started sounding like a threat. My life, my rules. That had become Daniel Brooks' answer to almost everything. Daniel was 29, effortlessly charming, and the kind of man who could make strangers feel like old friends within minutes. He carried himself with such confidence that people naturally assumed he was destined for something remarkable. I used to believe it too. We'd been together for 4 years and had shared my apartment for the last 12 months. To everyone around us, we looked like the perfect couple. We showed up together at charity dinners, work receptions, and neighborhood events, and our friends often joked that an engagement announcement couldn't be far away. What no one saw were the nights I stayed up alone, balancing bills after Daniel had already gone to bed. That Tuesday evening, I was sitting at the kitchen island reviewing our monthly expenses. Rent had cleared, the utilities were due in a few days, and I was highlighting several unfamiliar transactions when the apartment door opened. Daniel walked in carrying 2 glossy shopping bags with a navy tuxedo draped over one arm. Even before I saw the price tag, I knew it wasn't cheap. "What do you think?" he asked with a grin. "It looks great. What's the occasion?" "The charity gala tomorrow night." I frowned. "What charity gala?" "The one at the country club." "I didn't know you were involved with the country club." "I'm on the planning committee." "Since when?" "A couple of weeks." "You never mentioned it." He shrugged. "It wasn't important." My eyes dropped to the price tag. $3,000. Before I could say anything else, he walked into the kitchen and poured himself a glass of sparkling water. "How did you pay for it?" He answered without looking up. "Your Visa." I stared at him. "My Visa?" "You weren't using it." I opened my banking app. The transaction appeared immediately. Nordstrom, $3,847.62. The charge covered the tuxedo, shoes, tailoring, a designer watch strap, and a pocket square. In one afternoon, he'd nearly maxed out the emergency credit card I'd kept untouched for years. "You used my emergency card. You had plenty of available credit." "That's not the point." "Then what is?" "You spent almost $4,000 without asking me." He shrugged as if it were obvious. "It's an investment." "In what?" "Our future." "The gala matters, Emily. I'll be meeting donors, board members, and business owners. Those connections open doors for us." "You never told me any of this." "I didn't think I needed permission." "This isn't about permission." I turned the phone toward him. "You spent thousands of dollars on my credit card without even telling me." He rolled his eyes. "You always make money into a bigger issue than it is. A $3,800 tuxedo isn't a small issue. You make good money." "I'm a senior associate, Daniel." "Close enough." No, it isn't." He dismissed the distinction with a wave. "People outside your office don't care about titles." "I do." He stepped closer. "This gala gets us into rooms we belong in." "Us?" "We're building a future together." I held up my phone again. "No, you spent my money and decided that entitled you to call it an investment." He stared at the charge on my screen, but he still didn't look embarrassed. Suddenly, every networking event looked different. The photos, the captions, and the way Daniel always introduced himself first had never been about supporting me. He had been attaching himself to everything I'd built. "I don't need to be part of a power couple." "You do, if you want to make partner." "My managing partner doesn't care about Instagram." He laughed. "You understand the law. I understand people." I held up my phone. People who respect each other don't spend $4,000 on someone else's credit card. His smile faded. "This isn't about money," I said. "It's about trust." He pointed toward the door. "My life, my rules. There's the door." I simply nodded. "Okay." For the first time that night, he looked surprised. I walked into the bedroom, pulled a suitcase from the closet, and packed enough clothes and work essentials for a few days. He leaned against the doorway, still smiling. "Where are you going?" "A hotel." "With what money? I maxed out your card." "I have other cards." His expression barely changed. "I saved the card details from the accounts you left open." I froze. "You copied my financial information?" He shrugged. "You never noticed." That landed harder than the credit card charge. Until then, I'd thought we were arguing about a tuxedo. We weren't. I was living with someone who believed everything I owned was automatically his. I zipped my suitcase and walked toward the front door. "You'll be back tomorrow," he called after me. I looked at him. "No." His confidence wavered for the first time. "Emily." I stopped. "What? You really think you're proving something?" "I think I'm finally seeing something." He shook his head. "All this over one tuxedo?" I opened my banking app and turned the screen toward him. It stopped being about the tuxedo the moment I realized how much you'd been spending without telling me. "We're together." "Exactly." "So why are you acting like I stole from you?" I didn't answer. Instead, I asked, "When were you planning to tell me about any of this?" "I would have." "When?" "When it mattered." I let out a quiet laugh. "It matters now." His voice softened. "I've been building a future for us. With my money. Our money." Whenever he wanted to spend it, my paycheck suddenly became ours. Whenever I asked him to contribute or respect a boundary, the answer was always the same. My life, my rules. I reached for the doorknob. You know, he said, you liked the attention we got together. I looked back. I liked earning respect. Same thing. It never was. I opened the door. If you walk out, he warned, you'll regret it. I met his eyes one last time. I've spent 4 years compromising. I stepped into the hallway before he could answer. The door closed behind me. For the first time in a long time, the silence felt like relief instead of loneliness. The hotel was only 15 minutes away. It wasn't luxurious, but it was quiet, and that was exactly what I needed. At the hotel, I opened my laptop before I'd even unpacked. I needed to know whether the tuxedo was an isolated charge or part of something larger. I downloaded a year's worth of bank statements, credit card activity, utility payments, subscriptions, and every automatic transaction tied to my accounts. The rent records were the first thing that caught my attention. Daniel hadn't contributed in 8 months. During that same period, my cards had covered his country club fees, designer purchases, luxury dinners, and car expenses. While I paid the rent and household bills, Daniel had used my accounts to finance the image he showed everyone else. A LinkedIn notification appeared while I was reviewing the statements. Daniel had tagged me in a new post. Proud to stand beside the woman I helped push toward greatness. Big things are coming for us. Below it, someone had written, behind every successful attorney is an amazing husband. Daniel had liked the comment without correcting it. When I opened his older posts, I found the same pattern everywhere. He referred to our achievements, our clients, and the Carter legacy, even though we weren't married and he had never worked at my firm. He wasn't talking like my boyfriend anymore. Judging by the comments, most people believed him. That was when I finally understood the tuxedo had never been the real issue. It was only one piece of a much larger story. Sleep barely came that night. Every time I closed my eyes, another memory surfaced. Daniel introducing himself before I could, insisting we pose for photos at charity events, or correcting anyone who called him Emily's boyfriend. I'd always assumed he was proud of our relationship. Now I wondered if he'd been building a different identity all along. At 6:30 the next morning, Daniel started calling. I declined the first call, then the second. By 7, he'd called 11 times. His messages moved quickly from anger to pleading, then finally to a threat that he would come find me. I deleted every message without listening to the end. Instead, I ordered coffee, opened my laptop again, and started protecting the life I'd spent years building. My first call was to the credit card company. Good morning, this is Emily Carter. I need to report unauthorized charges. After verifying my identity, the representative reviewed the account. I see several recent transactions. So do I. Would you like to dispute the charges? Not yet. I want the receipts and authorization records first. Freeze the card and send the replacement to my office. Within minutes, the account was locked and the documents were on their way. My next call was to Green Valley Country Club. Good morning, Green Valley Country Club. This is Emily Carter. Oh, good morning, Mrs. Carter. I frowned. I'm sorry? Mrs. Carter, I'm not married. The receptionist apologized and pulled up my account. I think I found the issue. Our records list your household as Mr. and Mrs. Daniel Carter. I sat back in my chair. What name did you just say? Daniel Carter. Not Daniel Brooks. My surname. I need you to explain how that happened. Her voice grew more cautious. When the professional membership connected to your firm was converted into a household account last spring, Mr. Carter submitted the paperwork. That's not true. I'm very sorry. When was it submitted? About 11 months ago. 11 months. He had submitted it barely a month after moving into my apartment. So he signed documents using my last name and represented himself as my husband? According to our records, yes. I drew a slow breath. Remove Daniel Brooks from every account connected to my membership. She hesitated. He's listed on the planning committee for tomorrow night's gala. Removing him will automatically revoke that position. Then remove him. Would you like us to notify him first? No. A minute later, she confirmed the changes. Before ending the call, I asked one last question. Has he made any financial commitments through my membership? Yes, a $10,000 sponsorship for tomorrow night's gala. I never approved it. It was submitted under the Carter household. Cancel it. Of course, Ms. Carter. For the first time that morning, hearing Ms. Carter instead of Mrs. Carter felt like getting a piece of myself back. My next call was to the company financing Daniel's luxury car. After confirming my identity, the representative asked, "Will Mr. Carter be joining the call?" No. There was a brief pause. Our records show a premium vehicle package was added using your financial information. Whose name is on the lease? The lease is under Daniel Brooks, but your income and contact information were submitted as part of the household application. Did I sign anything? There is an electronic signature under your name. I didn't sign it. The representative's voice changed. Then we'll need to send this to our fraud department. It was the second account that morning, carrying a signature I had never made. He wasn't just spending my money anymore. He was signing my name into places where he had no right to be. I'll need copies of every authorization, electronic signature, and email connected to that account. Absolutely, Ms. Carter. By the time the last call ended, my inbox held applications, signatures, and authorizations I had never seen before. Daniel hadn't used my identity once. He had built an entire system around it. I closed LinkedIn and opened a blank document instead. For several minutes, the cursor blinked while I considered what to write. I wasn't interested in humiliating him or starting an online argument. I only wanted to correct the record. When I finally began typing, I kept the statement as simple and factual as possible. I'd like to correct a misunderstanding. I am not married, and no one is authorized to speak for me, my legal practice, or my financial affairs. Any communication claiming otherwise was made without my knowledge or permission. Please contact me or my firm directly regarding any professional matter. I read the statement several times before posting it. It didn't accuse anyone. It didn't mention Daniel by name or try to settle a personal score. It simply corrected the facts. I clicked post, set my laptop aside, and reached for my coffee. I hadn't even taken the first sip before my phone started vibrating. The notifications came so quickly I could barely keep up. The first public comment came from one of our firm's clients. Emily, thank you for clarifying. Someone claiming to be your husband contacted me recently. The private messages were worse. One client said Daniel had offered an investment opportunity. Another said he'd promised discounted legal services. A charity organizer asked why someone had attended a meeting as my spouse. This was no longer a misunderstanding between Daniel and me. People from completely different parts of my life were describing the same pattern. Then my phone rang. Margaret Lawson, managing partner. Margaret almost never called without scheduling it first, so seeing her name on my screen made my stomach tighten. I answered immediately. Good morning. I wish it were, she replied. Her voice was calm and professional, but I could hear the concern she was trying to keep out of it. We've received several phone calls over the last hour. What kind of calls? They're asking about your husband. I closed my eyes for a brief moment. I don't have one. I know, she said. Unfortunately, several other people believed you did. I leaned back in my chair. What happened? We're still sorting everything out, but someone identifying himself as Daniel Carter has been telling clients he's involved in your practice. At least 3 of them believed he could screen cases, arrange meetings with our partners, or speak on your behalf. My grip tightened around the phone. I never authorized any of that. I didn't think you had. What exactly has he been telling them? We're still collecting information, but enough people believed him that we had to take it seriously. The words hit harder than I expected. 3 clients weren't hearing gossip at a party. They believed someone outside the firm had legitimate authority to represent me. That wasn't embarrassing. It was dangerous. I'll cooperate however you need. I know you will. Her tone softened. We've already instructed reception that no one is authorized to speak for you or your practice except you. Thank you. She paused. And Emily, I'm glad you posted that clarification. So am I. A few minutes later, Melissa Chen from the Junior League called. Did you authorize a $25,000 sponsorship for next month's fundraiser? No. Daniel submitted it in your name and listed himself as your husband and gala co-chair. Cancel it. We already have. He's also been removed from the committee. Before hanging up, she added, You don't owe anyone an apology, Emily. I added another line to my notes. Unauthorized charity pledge, $25,000. Then I checked LinkedIn again. The comments were revealing far more than Daniel ever had. Daniel told me he'd personally review my documents before you saw them. He offered to introduce me to senior partners if I joined his charity committee. He always said your schedule went through him first. Each comment revealed another lie I'd never realized Daniel had been telling. At 11:15, Daniel called again. What the hell did you post? He demanded. I corrected the record. You humiliated me. I corrected misinformation. My committee just called. They kicked me off the gala. I know. They also revoked my country club access. It was tied to my membership. You knew that would happen. I knew they'd correct their records. He let out a bitter laugh. You always have to win. This isn't about winning. Then what is it about? This is about my name. We've been together 4 years. It's practically ours. No, Daniel, you don't get ownership of my identity because we dated. You represented yourself as my husband without my permission. I supported you. You used my name as if it belonged to you. That isn't support. The line fell silent. When he finally spoke again, his voice was calm. You embarrassed me. No. I paused. The truth embarrassed you. He hung up. 20 minutes later, a coworker forwarded me screenshots of Daniel's Instagram story. The first slide read, Some people can't handle a man with ambition. The second followed, When a woman becomes successful, she sometimes forgets who stood beside her from the beginning. The last one was painfully familiar. My life, my rules. His followers rushed to defend him, assuming they were seeing only one side of a breakup. Then someone shared my LinkedIn statement. Within minutes, the comments shifted. Weren't you telling everyone you were married? Didn't you pledge charity donations in Emily's name? You offered me discounted legal services because you said your wife owned the firm. Daniel tried to answer, but every reply only invited more questions. By lunchtime, people weren't arguing about our relationship anymore. They were questioning the identity he'd spent months creating. Around 1 o'clock, Margaret called. Emily, what happened? Daniel contacted reception. He introduced himself as your husband and demanded we honor legal discounts he'd promised several people. He also asked for invitations to next month's client reception. We don't even offer public discounts. I know. I rubbed my forehead. I'm sorry. Don't apologize, Margaret said. We've already notified building security. If he comes back, he won't get past the lobby. After we hung up, I looked at my notebook. Every call had uncovered another promise made in my name, another privilege he'd claimed, another lie that people had accepted as fact. He hadn't built that reputation himself. He'd borrowed mine. Just before 3 o'clock, my bank's fraud department called. "Ms. Carter, we're calling about an attempted change to your primary banking profile." I stood so quickly my chair rolled backward. What kind of change? Someone attempted to add himself as an authorized user to several linked accounts. Who? The individual identified himself as Daniel Carter. My grip tightened around the phone. He successfully answered several security questions, but our fraud system flagged the request before it could be completed. What information did he have? The last 4 digits of multiple accounts, your date of birth, employment details, and portions of your tax information. Enough to impersonate me. "That's why our fraud team intervened," the representative said. "We strongly recommend changing every password immediately. Given the circumstances, you should also consider filing a police report." When the call ended, I stood motionless in the silent hotel room. Daniel had tried to gain access to my financial accounts. For the first time since leaving our apartment, I stopped thinking about whether the relationship could be repaired. I didn't call Daniel. I called Rebecca Walsh instead. Rebecca and I had met during my second year at the firm. While I'd gone into corporate litigation, she'd built her career handling financial fraud and identity theft. She answered on the second ring. "You sound like you've had a day." "I think my boyfriend just tried to access my financial accounts." There was a brief silence. "The bank confirmed it?" "Yes, they stopped it before anything went through." "Good." Her calm voice immediately steadied me. "Emily, I need you to answer one question honestly." "Okay. Are you calling me as your friend or as your attorney?" I looked at the paperwork covering the hotel desk. Bank statements, membership forms, fraud alerts, screenshots, leasing documents. "My attorney." "Then listen carefully." I grabbed a pen. "Don't delete anything. Don't meet him alone. Keep every conversation in writing and save every message." I wrote each point down. "Everything you've described follows the same pattern," she continued. "What pattern?" "Identity misuse." The words landed heavily. "He used your surname, represented himself professionally, signed documents, and tried to access your financial accounts. This stopped being a relationship problem the moment it created legal consequences for you." I leaned back in my chair. "I keep wondering if I'm overreacting." "You aren't. But we were together for 4 years. We talked about marriage. I loved him." "I know." Her voice softened. "Emily, people can genuinely love someone and still commit fraud against them." That sentence stayed with me long after the call ended. Before hanging up, Rebecca asked me to send everything I'd collected. Later that afternoon, Rebecca called back. "I found something." "What is it?" "Open the leasing documents, page 14. I scrolled down until I found the electronic signature. Daniel Carter. Beneath it, relationship to primary applicant, husband. I stared at the screen. He typed that himself. "Yes. So it wasn't a mistake." "No." Rebecca let out a quiet sigh. "The signature confirms this wasn't a misunderstanding. He entered the information deliberately." An hour later, Rebecca emailed me the timeline she'd assembled from the documents. The country club application, vehicle lease, charity pledges, financial authorizations, and business introductions all showed the same pattern. Whenever using my surname gave Daniel money, influence, or access, he presented himself as my husband. He never claimed the title when it came with responsibility, only when it opened a door. Barely 10 minutes after Rebecca's email, my phone rang again. I let it ring, and 3 texts arrived within seconds. "We need to fix this. People are asking questions. Please stop making me look like a liar." I stared at the last message before replying. "Stop identifying yourself as my husband. Do not contact my employer or use my name in any financial or professional matter. Any further attempt will be documented." His answer came immediately. "You're threatening me now? Everything I did was for us. What's yours is ours." I replied once. "Not anymore, Daniel." Then I stopped responding. Rebecca called later that afternoon. "I've drafted the cease and desist," she said. "I also want his move-out supervised." I was planning to give him access on Sunday. "Have building security present. Don't be there alone, and don't meet him beforehand." Less than a week earlier, I'd believed we were building a life together. Now my attorney was helping me arrange for him to collect his belongings under supervision. At 4:30, the property manager called. "Daniel is downstairs," she said. "He says his key isn't working." On Rebecca's advice, management had suspended Daniel's personal access code after the fraud concerns were documented. He still had supervised access to collect essential belongings while the formal move-out process continued. "He isn't authorized to go upstairs without security. He says he lives there and that you're his wife." "I'm not his wife. I'm not his wife. You already have the lease, the fraud report, and my attorney's written instructions regarding supervised access." "Yes, we have both. We won't let him upstairs." A faint voice rose in the background, followed by the sound of someone arguing with the front desk. The manager lowered her voice. "He's demanding that we override the system." "Please don't." "We won't. Security is handling it." After the call ended, I placed my phone face down. Daniel had spent months using my name to gain access to places that had never belonged to him. Now, for the first time, that name was keeping him out. At 6 that evening, another email arrived. This one was from Rebecca. Subject, one more thing. Attached was a small business loan application, flagged after Daniel used my social security number, income, and employment information in the submission. The applicant wasn't Daniel Brooks. It was Daniel Carter. His marital status was listed as married. Spouse, Emily Carter. The combined household income matched my salary almost exactly. I stared at the application until Rebecca called. You've seen it? Yes. He used your income to support the application. I never signed anything. I know, the paperwork was submitted weeks ago. That hit harder than anything else. He hadn't started using my identity after the breakup. He'd been planning it while we were still living together. Rebecca let the silence settle before speaking again. This isn't just about protecting your reputation anymore. I looked back at the application. It's about protecting your financial future. And Daniel? If these documents are confirmed, he'll have to answer to more than you. The following morning, Rebecca helped me file a police report and sent formal fraud notices to the bank, the vehicle finance company, and every organization where Daniel had used my identity. This creates a documented timeline. If he tries anything else, we won't be starting from zero. That practical approach was exactly what I needed. No talk of revenge, just preparation. By Friday morning, the consequences were unfolding on their own. Melissa from the junior league called first. We removed Daniel as co-chair. I expected that. He insisted everything would be resolved once you calmed down. I couldn't help shaking my head. He still thinks this is a relationship argument. It isn't? No, it's documentation. Melissa laughed softly before her tone changed. Emily, you're not the first person who's raised concerns about him. What kind of concerns? He told several donors he could arrange legal services through you. We never realized those promises weren't legitimate. I wrote down another note. Charity misrepresentation. Around noon, Margaret called. We've identified 4 clients who dealt with Daniel. What happened? He approached them at networking events and implied he could speed up consultations or influence attorney assignments. He couldn't. We know. The important news is that every client appreciated your transparency. No one is pursuing action against you. For the first time in days, I felt some of the weight lift. The damage Daniel caused was real, but so was the paper trail proving it had never been mine. Sunday arrived. At Rebecca's insistence, I stayed away from the apartment while Daniel collected his belongings. The property manager had arranged for an off-duty police officer to be present, just in case. Instead, I spent the afternoon wandering through a botanical garden across town. Around 4:15, my phone finally buzzed. He's gone. A second message followed. Everything stayed civil. He left an envelope for you. I picked it up the next morning. Inside was a handwritten letter. It wasn't an apology. Most of it blamed stress, my career, or the people around us. Only near the end did Daniel admit what had been driving him all along. I got tired of introducing myself as just your boyfriend. Then another line. People listened when they thought I was your husband. I believed that part. Not because I thought he was remorseful, but because it explained everything. He hadn't expected anyone to question the story he'd built until it finally collapsed. I added the letter to Rebecca's evidence file. Several weeks later, Rebecca called. The bank completed its internal investigation and referred the loan application to law enforcement. What happens now? That will take time. For now, the fraudulent application has been canceled, and your accounts are protected. I stayed quiet. You don't sound relieved, Rebecca said. I never wanted any of this. I know, but you didn't forge the documents, sign your name, or tell people you were married. She paused. You simply told the truth. Over the following weeks, Daniel's carefully constructed image unraveled on its own. The country club revoked his membership. The charities removed him from every committee. Organizations withdrew the announcements he'd persuaded them to publish, and several businesses began contacting him directly instead of me. Eventually, even his social media accounts disappeared. Friends later told me he'd moved back in with his parents and started working at his father's insurance agency. I didn't celebrate. By then, I was too busy rebuilding my own life. For years, I'd believed protecting a relationship meant overlooking uncomfortable truths. Now I understood the opposite. Sometimes the only way to protect everything you've built is to stop protecting the person who's tearing it down. About 2 months after I left the apartment, Rebecca forwarded me a letter from Daniel's attorney. He claimed my LinkedIn post had damaged Daniel's reputation and caused him emotional distress. I called Rebecca. You've seen this? I have. What are we doing? I already replied. With what? She laughed. I reminded his attorney that your statement was factual, documented, and didn't identify Daniel by name. And? They withdrew the complaint. That was the last time Daniel tried to contact me through a lawyer. Months later, Rebecca told me Daniel had accepted a plea agreement requiring restitution, probation, and community service. By then, my life no longer revolved around cleaning up someone else's mistakes. The unexpected charges stopped. My clients stopped receiving strange promises. Even the silence at home felt different. Not empty, just peaceful. One Saturday morning, I realized I'd made coffee without checking my banking app first. It was the first time in more than a year that money wasn't the first thing on my mind. Work changed just as quickly. Without constant distractions, I focused better, left the office on time, and started enjoying my career again. A month later, Margaret stopped by my office. The Henderson acquisition is yours, she said. You'll be lead counsel. I looked up in surprise. You've earned it. As she reached the door, she smiled. You finally look like yourself again. Outside the office, life slowly found its rhythm. I started running on Saturday mornings again, had dinner with my mother every other Sunday, and finally used the vacation days I'd been saving for a future that was never going to happen. 3 months later, a friend invited me to a charity fundraiser at the Children's Hospital. For a moment, I almost said no. Then I realized Daniel didn't own charity events, or my memories. So I went. That's where I met Michael Reed, a pediatrician volunteering at one of the hospital booths. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. While other guests talked about donors and sponsorships, he was helping a little girl choose between 2 stuffed animals. When we were introduced, he smiled. Emily, I've heard you're an attorney. I am. What kind of law? Corporate litigation. He nodded. I'll pretend to understand what that means. I laughed. For nearly 20 minutes, we talked about books, travel, and the hospital fundraiser. He never asked how much I earned, who my clients were, or what connections I could introduce him to. Later, we happened to sit across from each other at dinner. When the bill arrived, we both reached for our wallets. I've got my half, Michael said. You don't have to. I know. He smiled. I just think it's fair. He set his card beside mine and continued asking about the book we'd been discussing, as if splitting a bill required no speech or negotiation. Over the next few weeks, we kept seeing each other. Nothing felt rushed, and he never treated my career like an invitation to promote himself. One evening, I invited him to a reception hosted by my firm. Instead of accepting immediately, he asked, "Do you actually want me there?" I smiled. Of course. He shrugged. I just don't want to mix your career with our relationship unless that's what you want. Thank you for asking. Daniel had always treated my career as something he could benefit from. Michael treated it as something that was mine. People still ask whether I regret posting that clarification or wish I'd handled everything privately. I did try to handle it privately. For years, every difficult conversation ended with the same answer. My life, my rules. Whenever a bill arrived, it was his life. Whenever my money or name opened a door, suddenly everything was ours. The night I left, Daniel was certain I'd return. I didn't. I hadn't ruined his life or taken anything that belonged to him. I had simply stopped letting him live mine. In the end, Daniel got exactly what he'd always demanded. His life, his rules, and every consequence that came with them.